Welcome everyone to our parents panel. This panel is all focused on parenting virtual learners. And as you all know, this has been a unique opportunity, I will say that, for the parents of students who have had to adjust to learning in a space that they probably hadn't had to learn in before, which is online, and taking sort of what they would be doing in a classroom and applying that to a virtual space. I am Elaine Armstrong. I serve as Vice President of Marketing for Goodwill of North Georgia, but I also have the pleasure of serving on the Board of Directors for the DeKalb Chamber and chairing the Education and Workforce Committee. This is a very exciting topic for us, because I think we think a lot about when it comes to, and when it has come to this pandemic, about our schools and our educators and our students. But right in the middle of all of this are our parents and families. And you all have had to overcome some definitely unique challenges. So I want to introduce to you and give them a chance to introduce a little bit of themselves, our panelists. So I'm going to start off with Maria Pinkelton. And Maria, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, of course, maybe the age or grade range of your students, really briefly, as you introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, my name is Maria Pinkelton, and I live in Decatur, Georgia. So we are in the City of Decatur school system. I am married, and my husband Joe and I have a 10-year-old son. He just turned 10 in December, who's in the 4th grade at the Talley Street Upper Elementary School. So it is 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. And I work at the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities in public relations, and my husband is a pilot at Delta. So he had a little bit of time at home for some time. Yeah. When I was working from home, he was at home. So that's our environment.
Thank you for that. Jennifer, if you go ahead and if you could give us a little overview of yourself and your family, and sort of an overview of your students and what grade levels.
Okay, well, so my husband and I and our 3 kids all live in Decatur also. My oldest is off to college, so that's not really part of this discussion. But so I have a junior in high school, and then also a 6th grader. And so they're here at home. I run a nonprofit. Fortunately, I am lucky enough to be able to work at home flexibly because of the role that I play in my organization. My husband runs a company. He's a business owner, and so his flexibility is not as great. So we're very fortunate from that perspective.
Absolutely. And it looks like our other 2 panelists may have been having like a little bit of connection issues, because they're popping in and popping out. So so we're gonna continue the conversation though with the 2 of you, and hopefully we can get Naya and Awet to join us once they pop back in. But so even in introducing yourselves, we have heard the differences in sort of where you are in terms of your family, and we know every family situation is different and unique as it relates to learning and making the adjustment to virtual learning and education during the pandemic. Can you share a little bit about what your family has experienced through all of this? So, you know, even for those of you who may have opportunities or have a parent at home, what has it been like in terms of making that adjustment? Maria, I'll go ahead and start with you.
It has been interesting. I think we all can agree with that. My office's last day of being open was actually on my birthday, March 12th, 2020. And that was it. Friday the 13th, there was no one at the office. We work in the state of Georgia, one of the state of Georgia buildings in downtown Atlanta. My husband was still working. And my son, none of us knew. We were like, oh, it'll just be a month or so, or we'll see. And when it became evident that it was not going to be a month or so, my husband and I started to be very grateful that our son is a homebody anyway and doesn't want to put on pants and would prefer to have his cats be his classmates. So we've been in a space of having blessed, just very blessed that he is minimal stressed in the situation, which means that our stress is only getting him to stay on task, keeping up with how the classes changed, and then they got it together, right? And then could really come and have a formal layout of how his day was going to go. As Tony Hannah has mentioned in the chat, that you have to extend grace and have grace for yourself. And it was the utmost respect we had for his teacher, who this is the middle of the school year, and she just had to flip it on the fly. And so she made it work, and whatever she was able to do, I was grateful for. We were trying to support him at home and keeping up with math, and we couldn't go to his math tutor anymore. And so it was a lot of parenting, and a lot of knowing that this word is so overused, unprecedented, but we needed to just give pause to the fact that this was a global crisis, and we can only keep things as normal as possible. And just to try to keep him happy and healthy and ourselves happy and healthy was our main objective.
Wow. I want to introduce Naya Johnson to this conversation. Naya, while we were waiting on you to reconnect, and I apologize that it looks like you and Awet were having a little bit of connectivity issues. And so our platform is full this morning, but I appreciate your patience and joining us, and appreciate your voice and being here. What I asked Jennifer and Maria to do was just give us a brief introduction of themselves, tell us a little bit about their family situation, as much as you're comfortable with, in terms of sort of what age your student is and what grade. And then my first question was a little bit about how you've been faring. What have you been experiencing in parenting a virtual learner? So Naya, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Thank you. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yes.
So I am a mother of a 7-year-old who's in 2nd grade boy, a very energetic social butterfly, needs to be moving and doing something all of the time. So this has been, needless to say, challenging. I do work from home from projects, so I feel grateful for that I, do not have to go physically out of my home for a job Monday through Friday. But a lot of parents that I know that are in our school and in our class still are working outside of the home with one child, 2 children at home on different schedules. So there's been a varied of complexities to this. It's not easy. And even in our situation where I am home, I have only 1 child. The beginning, I think Maria said, it was like, okay, this might not be real. I don't think we understood the long haul of it. So it did not seem intense. Our teachers, principal kind of swung into action, and we're like, okay, this is new. As time has gone, I have seen the shifts happen of, I'm tired of this. I don't want to do this anymore. I have a 2nd grader who, again, is energetic and sociable. So who's the only child. So not being able to see your friends, be with your friends. He's creative and competitive. So those environments are very instrumental to how he learns and how he is successful, because he moves when he sees other kids. Oh, I can do this. So there's become a sort of adjustment to be able to just get those sparks out in virtual learning. And the teachers are lovely, and I think that has helped, that they are trying their best to reach all of our students in different ways, which is very different from face-to-face. So that and the lunch lady role, I also vivisect these lunch. I do not say this lightly. This dinner snack, it is a lot. So people forget that. So I always have to say that, we forget that role is, instrumental. Are we eating again? Is it time again? It has been a lot. So between that, just trying to keep our kids engaged, my child specifically, right now we are experiencing, again, like I said, the long haul of it. And I think right now we're bearing that that burden of how to continue to be engaged through May when some kids are just like, I'm tired of this. So that is the challenge right now at hand. And I understand it's been way more difficult for other parents, like I said, who are still working outside of the home, who have children, multiple grades, multiple times, multiple schools. This is difficult for them.
Yeah. Awet Eyasu, I'd love to welcome you to the conversation. Same question for you. So give us an overview of your family situation, sort of how old your students are and what grades, and tell us how this experience of parenting a virtual learner has been for you.
First, I want to thank you. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank you for inviting me to join the parents, and I want to also welcome and thank the other parents who came here today. And I have all in all 4 kids, and 2 of which are in DeKalb school systems. And initially, the virtual learning was it was very surreal. I mean, I wasn't sure what to expect, and but we were, of course, not gonna. Me and my wife were not really willing to risk and um, say that. I mean, I definitely was happy that that our kids were not going to school and risk their health. But it was very scary that we were not sure if they were going to learn properly or if they were going to even keep whatever they're learning. And it was really, it was hard, especially for my youngest daughter, who is a first grader. It was very difficult keeping with the scheduling and with my other son, who is also in DeKalb schools, he knew what to do himself. He didn't really need a single help, and we never had any issues with him. But with my youngest daughter, it was very hard to keep up with the scheduling and also technical issues at first. We really was not sure how to use and how to communicate with the teachers. But over time, I mean, it got a lot easier, and our fear were not realized. So my daughter, and my son, they're all learning good, and but it was it was kind of scary moment. I mean, with the whole pandemic, but on top of that, just worrying that if the children are learning or not. Um, but over time, I think it got better, and I can really say right now that it's not really as bad as we thought.
Thank you for that. And so glad you could join us today. Jennifer, I want to ask you that question as well, because I know you gave us sort of an overview. You've got a high schooler and the 6th grader. And even though, we're talking about parenting virtual learners, you still have one in college, which I think is still very relevant. We heard from a couple of our leaders in our higher education institutions in our morning panel. I think that's still an important part of the process. Even even college students have had a very different experience than what they have. So give us a little bit of sense of your family's experience in all of this.
So I think it's kind of mixed. In the beginning, of course, separate from the fear of what was happening with the pandemic, it was almost like a snow day, if you will, because nobody kind of knew what was going on. We were all at home. Everybody was trying to figure it out. And for a few weeks there, it was just kind of like just not really much of anything. And then as we started to realize this was going to be a longer term situation, we had to figure out schedules and for both my husband and I and the kids. And at the time, my now college student was a senior, and we were thinking about graduation and prom and his robotics competitions, all of which did not occur. And so I think the hardest thing at that point was trying to separate from learning, because at that point, I think teachers were still figuring things out. Everybody was trying to figure out how to be effective online. Technology wasn't really a big issue for us. But I will say, I think the emotional roller coaster of what is happening, how is this going to work? And then for my oldest child, you know, there goes my senior year. What does that even mean? That has been challenging. And then now you fast forward to the new school year, which I think, like many families, we thought for sure back then that we would not be doing this still. And here we sit. And I have one social butterfly at home, and I have one introvert at home, and they're both struggling. I think that when my introvert goes back, he's a junior in high school, it's going to be tricky because he has not been forced to have those social interactions that he really needs to have, because he's going to be applying for college and then looking for jobs. And I think that for him, having interactions with people, that is something he has to work at, and he hasn't had to do that for a while. So that's tricky. On the flip side, my daughter's a social butterfly. She really misses being with people. And there's, you know, not really much we can do about that. We've struggled with the schedule, getting to bed on time, like trying to maintain that school day schedule that we used to be quite good at, and we had it down. And everybody knew when they needed to be where, when, and how. And that is still a challenge. So I like Tony commented about having grace for your children. And I think that's true, because as we all struggle to do whatever it is that we're responsible for in our work and home life, we also have to make sure that they're doing what they're doing. And it's been a challenge. I mean, it's been great to be close to them. But at the same time, I think we all are quite tired of one another. So.
I mean, I could definitely imagine, and I think we should just pop into that question that Tony Hannah asked in the chat. Jennifer, you kind of hit on it already, and I'd love to hear from the other panelists about Tony's question. So she said she'd love to know how you're keeping your sanity and finding balance and extending grace to your children during this crazy time. So how are you all doing all of this? I mean, my hats are off. All of you are working in some capacity or other and running businesses and doing different things, all while juggling, you know, being a teacher and being a tutor. How are you all balancing all of this and extending grace to your kids?
For me, it's been reaching out and speaking with other parents. The couple that set my husband and I up, it's also a professional mom and a pilot dad. And so I talk to her a lot. She understands what it's like to just sometimes be a single parent for a week, and to know that she's having the same challenges I am with feeling, am I lacking at work? Am I lacking as a parent? Am I lacking as a spouse? Right. And so it's this constant kind of struggle. So the keeping grace comes from me keeping grace with it happens with me keeping grace with myself, but then letting my child know that he doesn't always have to be that strong. Right. So we've like set up park, face mask, bike riding, you know, play dates and stuff. So he's not completely isolated. To Jennifer's point, I worry about him just being happy, being a little hermit, and that's not going to be the rest of your life. So trying to give him some treats, right, of socialization. It is definitely probably the hardest thing that we've had to put him through, and just really touching base with him and checking in on his emotions and making sure he's not trying to be too tough if he doesn't have to be.
Yeah. It's a great point. Naya or Awet, would you like to join in and answer that question? How are you extending grace to your children and your families and balancing
I think first
everything?
has been like honesty, to say, I understand you're having a bad day and I'm having a bad day too. Like,
yes.
This is, I'm done too. I get it. We understand, but we're going to power through anyway. And music has been a definite, for me, he also goes to an art school. So I think that has been so beneficial in this pandemic, to break up the monotony of classes, and just that they do get a little bit more collaboration and just difference to express themselves with the art classes. And at home, when I see that mood is shifting, I kind of just turn on some music to do that. Other parents in our grade have come together just to support. I did a Zoom called Sip and, which now might be called Sip and Scream, because we all need to get it out. But that just camaraderie of parents from on all different levels, married, 3 children, one child, that we're all dealing with the same issues of the balancing act and extending grace to ourselves. Like, I know I have to take a moment, because we did have that school time of, I'm with my son all the time. So when he went to school, it was our break. And so now there is no break. And so sometimes it's like, hey, you can go downstairs and watch TV, and I'm going to be up here just woofing and trying to, and I'm a stickler for education. So I understand the gap very clearly between Black and brown children, and that's already widening in this pandemic. So I'm like, no, we're doing extra work. And so I had to just take away from that as well, as this is not, regular time. So extending grace to ourselves, reaching out to other parents, going to sleep a little earlier, just to, you need that extra, in the morning. And just being honest with my son when I understand that he's frustrated, and saying, I'm frustrated too, but we're still going to get through, and we're going to flip the script. And, so I think that has helped, just to let him understand that I understand this too. And this is not just a 7-year-old second grader thing. It's, we're all going through this, and we're all going to be okay.
Yeah, Awet, you have 4 children. So tell me how you are extending that grace to your children, particularly as you and your family are all together for so long, and throughout the day.
That's really it's a kind of a mixed one. In a way, it's a blessing. In a way, it's also it's very challenging. The first few weeks were very interesting. My oldest son, he is partially mildly autistic, and it was kind of very challenging and hard for him, because he was acting cranky. He was really getting frustrated, and I did not know what to do, and but he's fine. He didn't have any problems, but he just was not acting himself, and that was the first thing I noticed. So we tried to be kind of accommodating, and the other one, my youngest daughter, she's first grader, and that was so we had to take the role. And thankfully I have I have my wife with me always. She been great help. So but we had to take the role of being a teacher, even though we're not teaching. We just are the principal, and we got to keep on checking on them, whether they're on their computer. And I'm kind of paranoid, and I want to make sure if they're on the website, the school website, and I keep hovering over them, and to the point, they kind of didn't like that. And so I had to stop hovering over the oldest kids, but I still do that with my youngest daughter. And but my other kids, they don't want me to be on the computer screen. They would hide the screen if I come over. So but overall, it's been a very in a way, we have had the most time. This year has been, I think, the most time we ever spent together, and we have had more time to connect. And but at the same time, you get tired, and just sometimes just go outside, just drive for no reason, and come back. But overall, I think it is also mixed. I mean, like, it's a blessing in a disguise, in a way. So that's how I would put it.
Yeah. I love the suggestions that you all have made, and you really have already sort of gotten into my questions, because the next question I was going to ask is, sort of what tips and resources. So you've all talked about a lot of the things that you've been doing sort of to cope, to get away, listen to music, maybe take a drive, walk outside, go to the park, and maybe go upstairs and have, your children downstairs. But in terms of, and a couple of you have hit on this already, is, making sure that your students aren't falling behind and keeping on them, but also extending that grace to the educators who have just had to flip the switch and pivot. What resources or tips have you found that have been particularly helpful? Are there specific websites, or there specific communication channels? Are there things that you have just done to keep in contact with the school, or attending meetings or things? Just give us an insight as to what's been working in terms of tips and resources that may be helpful to other parents. I'll go ahead and start with you, Jennifer.
So I think that my kids are a little bit older, and it's been somewhat tricky trying to make sure that they are moving forward in their learning, particularly my junior, because if he's not doing well in math, it's so far past what I'm capable of helping him with. It's just no joke. I mean, I can look at it and don't even understand what he's doing. So that's been really tricky. But I think there are some great sites out there like Khan Academy and some other sites that have helped supplement. I think we would be naive to think our kids are not falling behind to a degree. And I think for typical students, they will make that up. For students who struggle perhaps with learning disabilities, and I do have children that have learning disabilities, so that's a little bit more tricky. I think they'll fall further behind. I think kids that are already trying to across that gap are falling further behind. I think being open and thoughtful with the teachers has been really helpful too. And I do think we need to extend them a lot of grace. I know that no matter what the administration tries to put into place, it really falls on the individual teachers to make that happen. And being a virtual teacher was never in their wheelhouse. That's not what they signed up for. Happen to be lucky enough to work with teachers as my profession, and they're there because they love the kids and they need to be working with kids and moving children forward. So I think just making sure, it makes me feel better when I'm reaching out to them and thanking them when they are doing that extra time that I think maybe Dr. Dede mentioned on the previous session about reaching out to kids when they're struggling and setting separate time and making sure, like I get a text. If my daughter isn't logged into the right thing, her teacher sends me a text, which is phenomenal because she's got 20 kids in that class, and I'm looking at my daughter across the room thinking she's logged into the right thing and she's not. So I think just staying in contact with them and thanking them makes me feel better, which is good. And I think that for my kids to see that interaction helps them provide grace. I think, we take a lot of walks. Our dog's very happy.
Naya, I'd love to hear from you because you have a younger son. So, second grade, are there resources? Are there things that you're doing to ensure? And again, you hit on it in terms of making sure that your son doesn't fall behind, and you're staying on to him. What resources and what tips are you using?
The first one is to be in touch with your child's teacher. I think that has been, and we use Dojo. That has been instrumental to just, hey, how are things going? And then to check on them as well and thank them, because we did have one teacher. He has two teachers, primary teachers, who this really affected. And we had her last year face to face. So I know the amazing teacher she is. And in virtual, it was very different. And I chose to have a meeting, like, what can we do to, make this better? Because parents were frustrated and it was a lot. So I think the communication with the teachers was number one. Like, well, what can I do? Because this is moving a little slow for my child. So can you give me some things to do? Is there extra? So they did provide extra resources. I also signed up to IXL, which is one of the learning websites or things that you can go by grade. I think it's K through 12 or first through 12th grade. I'm not sure. but that was just extra support for him to be learning something, and it's by himself. And then also iReady, we have that program, which I think is very good. And they like it. Kids like it. We have reading time at home. And YouTube has been awesome to look up things that I think in second grade they, should be learning that I know they can't get to everything right now. And so I'll just plug a little video and, find a video on that topic, compound sentences, and it'll be something fun that I could not teach that fun. So in that way. So I think YouTube, again, other parents asking them what they're doing, computer programs, iExcel, iReady, things like that. And just reading time. We still have the old school bridge books, like they go from second to third grade or third grade to fourth grade. Even if it's just one page, I don't try to go overboard, but I do want him to stay on top of things, because I know the gap is widening. And so those are the resources. Like, we use good old books. You can find them at the dollar store or Amazon, and they're usually fun for kids to do, but to keep them to provide the support that they might not have in school, because they can't teach everything virtually during this time. And I don't have to teach it, because even second grade, sometimes I'm like, why are y'all learning it like this? We didn't learn it like that. So it's challenging, but those are the things. And again, other parents, your teachers, our principal, assistant principal, I feel like I can reach out to them for, hey, are we going to get out ready this year? Which is what I did. So having those avenues really have been helpful.
Mm-hmm. What have you been using? Have you and your wife been looking for other resources or using other resources to supplement what you've had in the classroom, in the virtual classroom?
I think Naya kind of mentioned most of them. I think for my oldest kids, I really had never, just like Jennifer mentioned earlier, that they really know what they're doing, and they really don't need much help, whether it is technical or school related. They are a lot self-sufficient. But for my youngest daughter, I think the teachers has been very helpful. They've been the primary resource that me and my wife reach out to. And of course, the Class Dojo platform has been very helpful. I think those were the primary things, besides our own just Googling something if we don't understand it. But I really want to say, I think for the younger kids, Class Dojo is very useful resource.
Great. Maria, what about you? Have you sought out or found other resources and tips that you think might be helpful and have been helpful to you that may be helpful to other parents?
So we have used many of the platforms you guys have talked about, iExcel, iReady, YouTube. When this all started, a platform called Brain Pop, and I know many others just started giving their stuff away for free. And I love the way the characters would like joke around and tell stories and explain concepts that I'm not strong in math. And so we kind of really used it for math. But, as I said in the beginning, these things were given away free, but currently now a lot of them do have a financial obligation. And so because of my child's challenges in math, but when he gets it and he's fully engaged, I needed to get someone to engage him. And so we found a tutor that she was not, there's some tutoring companies around. She was a little less than they were. But she is like this dynamic, wacky lady with like white gray hair, and she's a little nerdy, quirky. And she's got my kid twice a week for 30-minute pops. And I'm like, he needs that. I can't give that to him. You hear things differently. You as a kid hear things from a person over here totally differently than your mom and dad, and they could be saying all the same things. So we've had to make an investment to keep that up, right? So he doesn't fall behind. So that's probably been the biggest resource that I've reached out for. And it's like, okay, gotta make this investment this year. I'm not paying for aftercare. That's what I'm paying for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We've got about almost 10 minutes left, about 9 minutes left in our session. So I want to see if I can get 2 more questions in. And if there are any questions for those folks who are watching, please type it in the chat and I'll make sure to get to one of those. But what has been the most surprising thing for you all in terms of this experience? So what didn't you, I mean, obviously I know there are a lot of surprises and things that you didn't expect, but if you could pick one thing that has been the most surprising. We've heard a lot about the challenges that you have had to overcome and sort of the innovation and the creative thinking that you all have applied to your situation. But what's been the most surprising thing that you think that you weren't expecting to find out? And I'll start with you, Awet.
I think I was specifically surprised at my youngest daughter's ability to adapt. And now that she can get a computer, I mean, a 6-year-old kid, take a computer, turn it on, know her password, log in, and use different softwares, go to a website, click. I mean, so this has been very interesting for me to see how resilient kids are and how they adapt and learn quickly. And now a lot of things that she probably would have not learned sooner, now she's pretty proficient with using computer basics. And I mean, she always knew how to use like YouTube for, watching stuff, but now she really can go and sign into an account that is with her name on it. And so it's been very interesting that seeing and follow and watching my little girl learn how to use electronics, and specifically how to use a computer and browse on the internet.
Yeah, I probably need her here to help me log into everything that has a password. If she can do all that and remember all her passwords, that's if I could just get through one day in doing that. Jennifer, I'd love to ask you the same question. What's been the most surprising thing for you and your family?
I talked a lot about my kids, and I'm going to go back to the teachers again. So because I sit so close to where my daughter is learning and she doesn't always have headphones on, I get to hear what her different teachers are doing. And I feel like I am really surprised that they have been able to be so creative and agile in the way that they're teaching. I mean, she has one teacher who is great, and he's engaging, and he's also got his kindergartners in the background doing school, and he just really has manipulated it so that they're having good interactive groups. He's getting with each of the kids and following up. He's engaging them when he's actively teaching. He's engaging them in the work they're doing when he is not live in front of them. And I'm very impressed by that. I'm very surprised that the number of teachers that have really been able to just kind of step up and make this work under such difficult circumstances.
Mm-hmm. That is such an excellent point. I mean, we always think about teachers and they're teaching virtual learning, but they are parents too. And I'm so glad that you highlighted that picture, because it just hadn't been a picture for me that had clicked that a lot of these teachers are also parenting virtual learners at the same time. Wow, remarkable. You know what, Maria, I'd love to ask you, same question. What's been the most surprising thing?
I would say that it's been very heartwarming to see the love of the school system as a whole. The way they quickly realized that there are kids who don't have Wi-Fi. There are kids who don't have lunch. There are kids who don't have snacks, and how they just were, all right, we're going to have the school cafeteria at the high school. That's the most central school. We'll put them into work, and we'll pack lunches, and we'll have hotspots around town and issuing laptops. It was a lot of tech logistics in the background, but all driven by this love of the kids. And so that was just very heart-filling, heartwarming. In all, it wasn't perfect, right? Nothing is perfect, but it's the attempt to make the place for kids to achieve that really resonated with me.
Great points. I mean, I think this has highlighted, unfortunately, it's highlighted a lot of the disparities in terms of what families are experiencing and and probably for the best, because had we not had this experience, we may not know that there's so many students that don't have connectivity or don't have food throughout the day. And maybe we thought about it, but it really sheds a light on it. So great perspective there. Naya, same question for you. What's been the most surprising thing?
We're in DeKalb school district, and in the beginning I saw them, and I know one of the cafeteria staff, and she's also a parent, but she's working in the midst of the pandemic, making lunches, making bags, and the bus drivers who were delivering them at certain places, just all of those, the technology, trying to get to as many kids as possible. And then I also say that this time allowed me and some other parents who the Office of Parent Involvement has been reaching out and doing the class and parents as leaders. So really learning about what goes on in the district, how things are going, what things need to be done and can be done. The teachers, again, our math and science teacher has 2 children at home. They made a little video for our class to when they were learning about a push and pull and science. I mean, so the creativity, the adjustment that teachers have made to really just engage children and keep them happy and try to make them social with each other. She asked in the morning, how are you feeling? They chat and then they talk a little bit about it. I think those things are very important. We've had the counselor do some sessions with the kids. How are you feeling today? I think that's also very important, because the emotional is what we tend to forget in these times, that they feel a lot of things that we can express, but they might not be able to. And then my child's own independence, which I already knew he was kind of like me, but this is a whole new level of independence that I got it, Mom, I got it. And he really has it. So just respecting him as a little person, just really growing into his own person. And I think that has been a beautiful thing to watch, because we're not in the classroom, right? So we hear the conversations, we hear the teaching, I hear his answers, I hear what's going on. And I think that has been a tremendous bonding effect, that I really respect the brain that he has, and when he's trying, I know he's trying, and the teachers. So that's been a lovely thing. So the whole thing in this devastating and unprecedented time, I think we do look at all the things that have been happening that are challenging us, but making us better in the long run.
Yeah, wow. We are unfortunately at the end of our time, but my hats are off to each and every one of you. Like I said in the beginning, each of your family situations are unique from each other, but they're unique to this whole community of what we have right now with parents and families and adjusting. And I appreciate each of you lending your voices to this conversation. I'm so happy that you all have found within all the challenges some bright spots, and you have made bright spots, and you've remained hopeful. And I appreciate you bringing that to this conversation. I know our audience does too. So I'd like to thank you for sharing your personal stories with us today. I'd love to thank our audience for joining this session. And of course, our sponsor for this session, Georgia United Credit Union, who has graciously donated a door prize. And so for those of you who are watching this session today, be sure to keep track of your email. We're going to pick a random viewer from our email, and we'll go ahead and send you that. So thank you to that. For those of you who can stay with us, please take a networking break. So we'll do that until 11:15. And then if you can come back at 11:15, our main stage panel, we're going to hear from Matt Jones, who is the Chief of Staff for the Georgia Department of Education. And then we're also going to hear from Greg Wilson, who is going to give us trends in education. And he's from University of Georgia's Carl Vinson Institute. I thank you so much, and we will be back in our program at 11:15. Thank you so much to our parent panelists. Thank you. Bye-bye.